There are moments in a woman's life where she looks around and realizes she's carrying far more than her spirit was designed to hold. The weight of expectations, the noise of other people's needs, the quiet battles she never spoke about, the dreams she tucked away because life demanded survival instead of expansion. And in that moment, when everything feels heavy, you are given a choice. Not a punishment, not a failure, but a choice. The choice to reset your life, to reclaim your peace, to rebuild your mind, to restart your emotional world from a place of power, not pressure. Resetting your life isn't about running away from what happened. It's about stepping toward who you becoming. It's about rewiring your thoughts, healing your heart, and breaking the cycles that have been repeating for years, not because you're weak, but because you finally understand that you deserve better than the stress you've been surviving on. This is a moment where you stop begging life to change and start becoming the woman who changes her own life. The first shift happens in the mind. A reset begins when you decide that your thoughts are no longer allowed to bully you. You are no longer available for overthinking that steals your sleep, doubts that poison your confidence, or memories that try to convince you that your story is stuck. The mind is like a house. If you don't clean it, clutter takes over. And life has taught you enough times that an unhealed thought becomes an unhealed pattern. So you start reorganizing your inner world. Throw out the narratives that weren't yours. You stop rehearsing the worst case scenario. You redirect your mental energy toward creation instead of fear, and slowly, silently, power returns. Not in a loud moment, but in quiet, disciplined decisions, choosing boundaries, choosing patience, choosing self-respect. A mental reset is not an event. It is a daily commitment to think in a way that honors your future. The second shift happens emotional. A woman cannot reset her life if she is still emotionally tied to what broke her. Healing is not forgetting, it's releasing the pain without releasing the lesson. It's learning how to let the heart breathe again. You cannot hold your breath and heal at the same time. So you let yourself feel what you've avoided. You allow the tears that never came. You honor the exhaustion you push through, and then piece by piece you repair yourself. You give your heart new rules. It is no longer allowed to settle for inconsistency, confusion, or half love. You teach your emotions how to work for you, not against you. You replace guilt with grace. You replace shame with understanding. You replace heartbreak with alignment. Emotional resetting means choosing peace over chaos, even when chaos is familiar. Because you know you deserve a life that feels calm on the inside, not just one that looks stable on the outside. The third shift is identity. Every reset requires a rebirth. You cannot step into a new life carrying the identity you built out of survival. You have to become the woman who matches the future you're asking for. That means rewriting how you see yourself. That means breaking your loyalty to the version of you who accepted less than she deserved. That means choosing habits that strengthen you instead of drain you. You become intentional with your energy, your time, your circle, your discipline. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop shrinking to comfort others. You stop apologizing for growing. You walk like a woman who knows she is rebuilding her world brick by brick. You talk like someone who has outgrown her old doubts. You move like someone who understands that reinvention is not betrayal, it's evolution. A reset is not a dramatic moment. It is a steady rise. It is a woman saying, I'm not done. I'm just beginning, and every day she chooses again. She chooses clarity. She chooses growth. She chooses herself, because the real transformation happens the moment she realizes she was never stuck. She was just prepared for a higher version of herself. This is your reminder. You are allowed to reset. You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to rebuild your mind, your emotions, your future. And when you do, it won't just change your life, it will rebirth your power. A mental reset begins long before anything in your outer world changes. It starts in the quiet corners of your mind, the place nobody sees, the place where your real battles live. For a woman, the mind becomes the command center of everything she feels, everything she tolerates, and everything she tolerates, and everything she becomes. And when life has been heavy, when people have taken more than they ever gave, when responsibilities have been stacked on your shoulders without rest or recognition, your mind begins to absorb that weight until it no longer thinks freely. It thinks in survival mode. It thinks in defense mode. It thinks in exhaustion. That is why the first step in resetting your life is not changing your environment, not changing your job, not changing your relationships. It's changing your thoughts. Your thoughts shape the rhythm of your life. What you repeat in your mind becomes the soundtrack of your behavior. And a woman who has been through pain knows that her inner dialogue can become a battlefield. She wakes up thinking about everything she's failing at. She spends the day thinking about everything she doesn't have. She goes to sleep replaying moments she wishes she handled differently. And slowly, without realizing it, she becomes a prisoner to her own mind. This is why mental reset is not optional, it's necessary. It's the moment when you step back and ask yourself, does my mind work for me or against me? A mental reset begins with awareness. You cannot change what you do not acknowledge. You start paying attention to the thoughts that interrupt your peace, the doubts that drag you backward, the fears that keep you small. You observe the anxiety that whispers worst case scenarios, the overthinking that convinces you that you're not enough, the self-blame that keeps you tied to past mistakes. And instead of letting those thoughts control you, you begin to challenge them. You don't accept every thought as truth. You don't treat every emotion as a fact. You learn to separate what you feel from what is real. A powerful reset requires cleansing. Just like you clean your home when it gets cluttered, you must clean your mind when it gets overloaded. You remove the thoughts that were planted by people who didn't see your worth. You throw out the limitations that were handed to you by a world that benefits from your insecurity. You release the narratives that tell you you're too late, too weak, too broken, too behind. And instead, you begin planting new thoughts that reflect the woman you want to become, not the one you were forced to be. You build discipline around your thinking. You create new mental habits. You interrupt negative patterns. When your mind tries to drift into self-doubt, you pull it back. When it tries to replay old hurts, you redirect it. When it tries to panic about the future, you slow it down. This isn't easy. This isn't instant. This is a daily conscious practice, almost like training a muscle. And every day you stay committed, your mental strength grows stronger, your clarity sharpens, your confidence rises. A reset also requires boundaries, not just with people, but with your own mind. You no longer allow your thoughts to wander into spaces that drain you. You don't overthink situations you cannot control. You don't let your mind romanticize memories that hurt you. You don't allow yourself to create fear where there is possibility. You become the gatekeeper of your peace. Eventually, your mindset shifts. You stop thinking reactively and start thinking intentionally. You stop surviving mentally and start creating mentally. You start imagining a future that excites you instead of one that scares you. You start believing that life can be rebuilt, not because someone saves you, but because you save yourself. A mental reset is the beginning of everything. Because once a woman takes control of her mind, she takes control of her life. And that is the moment her entire story begins to change. Emotional resetting is one of the hardest things a woman will ever do because the heart does not operate on logic. It operates on memory, attachment, hope, disappointment, and everything she lived through silently. You can train your mind with discipline, but the heart requires courage. The heart requires honesty. The heart requires the willingness to feel what you have avoided, confront what you've buried, and release what you kept holding because you didn't know who you'd be without it. A woman's emotional world is layered. She feels deeply, she carries heavily, she remembers vividly. And that is why an emotional reset is not a luxury. It is a necessity for survival. A woman often carries emotions the world never sees. She smiles while she is hurting. She supports others while she is breaking. She forgives while she is still bleeding, and after years of doing this, her heart becomes tired, not weak, but exhausted from holding storms she never had time to heal from. Emotional exhaustion creates confusion, irritability, numbness, or sudden tears that appear for no clear reason. These are signs that your heart is asking for a reset. Not because you failed, but because you have finally reached the point where healing is no longer optional, it is urgent. The first step is allowing yourself to feel. You cannot reset what you refuse to acknowledge. Suppressed emotions do not disappear. They just find new ways to come back later. So you give yourself permission to be human. You stop shaming yourself for hurting. You stop pretending that you're fine. You let the truth surface. Maybe you admit that something broke you deeper than you wanted to. Maybe you finally faced the disappointment of people who never showed up for you. Maybe you recognize the loneliness you've been ignoring. Whatever the truth is, you face it not to reopen wounds, but to finally clean them. Once you face your emotions, the next step is releasing them. Release does not mean forgetting. Release means choosing peace over pain, choosing acceptance over attachment, choosing growth over guilt. You release the expectations that were never met. You release the apologies you never received. You release the love that wasn't reciprocated. You release the versions of yourself that stayed too long in places where she was undervalued. Emotional release is not weakness, it is strength. It is strength. It is the courage to stop carrying what no longer belongs to you. Then comes emotional re-education. Your heart must relearn what healthy love feels like, starting with the love you give yourself. You teach your heart new boundaries. You teach it that peace is more important than attention. You teach it that clarity is more valuable than chemistry. You teach it that being alone is better than being with someone who confuses you. This is where a woman's emotional reset becomes powerful, because she begins choosing herself not out of fear, but out of self-respect. Healing also requires patience. Emotional resets don't happen overnight. You may feel strong one day and fragile the next. You may feel hopeful in the morning and triggered in the evening. That's how healing works. Waves, not lines. You must allow yourself to grow through the waves. Your emotions are learning how to exist in a safer, healthier space. Be patient with them. Be gentle with yourself. Healing is not a test you pass. It is a journey you walk. Then, slowly, something beautiful happens. You begin to feel lighter. Your heart begins to open again, not recklessly, but wisely. You begin to choose relationships that nourish your spirit. You begin to protect your emotional energy with confidence. You begin to speak up for your needs. You begin to walk away from environments that disturb your peace. Your emotions start working with you instead of against you. An emotional reset is not about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming the future. It's about honoring the woman you are becoming by finally healing the woman you used to be. And when a woman resets her heart, when she truly, fully, courageously heals, she becomes unstoppable. Not because she has no scars, but because her scars have transformed into wisdom, strength, and peace. Identity is the foundation of every transformation. When a woman decides to reset her life, it's not just her mind or emotions that shift, it is who she believes she is. Identity shapes every choice, every boundary, every habit, every relationship, every dream. And for many women, the hardest truth to face is this. The identity they've been living with was built in survival, not in self-love. It was built in struggle, not in clarity. It was shaped by what life demanded, not by what her spirit desired. Resetting your identity is not about becoming someone new. It's about peeling away everything that disconnected you from your true self. A woman's identity is often shaped unconsciously. She becomes used to being strong because nobody gave her space to be soft. She becomes a caretaker because she was raised to put everyone else first. She becomes the peacekeeper because she was taught to avoid conflict. She becomes the achiever because she believed her worth depended on her productivity. She becomes a quiet one because life convinced her that her voice doesn't matter. Before she even realizes it, she wakes up one day and feels disconnected from herself, not because she lost who she was, but because she outgrew the version life forced her to be. Identity reset begins with recognition. You look at the woman in the mirror and ask, is she who I am, or is she who I had to be to survive? This question alone will crack open your truth. Because deep down, every woman knows when she has been shrinking herself, overextending herself, hiding herself, or living below her potential. Recognition is not shame, it is awakening. After recognition comes release. You release the labels that were placed on you. Too emotional, too quiet, too loud, too independent, too soft, too much, not enough. You release the roles that drained you. You release the habits that kept you stuck. You release the version of yourself who tolerated disrespect, who doubted her power, who accepted temporary love, who believed she had to earn her worth. Resetting your identity requires shedding. It requires saying goodbye to the woman you were only because you didn't know yet how powerful you could be. Then comes reconstruction. This is where you begin rewriting the story of who you are, not with desperation, but with intention. You define yourself not based on your past, but based on your potential. You start asking yourself different questions. What kind of woman do I want to be? What does she tolerate? How does she speak? How does she love? How does she carry herself? What boundaries does she have? What habits does she practice daily? What energy does she give to the world? What energy does she no longer allow into her life? Identity is built through repetition. You become the woman you practice being. You become the woman you practice being. If you practice confidence, you become confident. If you practice boundaries, you become respected. If you practice discipline, you become unstoppable. If you practice self-love, you become magnetic. Identity is not a moment. It is a daily alignment with your highest self. Resetting your identity also requires courage, because once you change who you are, you will naturally outgrow people, places, and patterns that were attached to your old self. You will lose connections that depended on your silence. You will distance yourself from people who preferred the version of you that didn't know her worth. You will step away from environments that limit your growth. And yes, this can feel lonely, but it is the loneliness of elevation, not emptiness. It is the silence of rebuilding, not abandonment. You are not losing people. You are losing the chains that kept you from rising. And then something remarkable happens. You begin to feel aligned. You speak with certainty. You walk with purpose. You make decisions based on your future, not your fears. You move differently, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you finally understand yourself. You live with clarity. You choose relationships that feel like peace. You choose habits that make you powerful. You choose dreams that match your potential. Identity is destiny. When a woman shifts who she believes she is, her entire life changes. She no longer asks for permission. She acts. She no longer seeks validation. She validates herself. She no longer accepts crumbs. She expects the feast she deserves. This is the final stage of the reset, the rebirth. Not a new woman, but the real woman finally stepping into the world with strength, softness, wisdom, and fire that were always hers.